fair warning, this is going to be a completely spoiler-filled review of The Last of Us 2. I just can't talk about this game without spoilers. It's just impossible. So there you go, you've been warned. Let's talk about Last of Us 2. So The Last of Us 2 finally came out this past Friday, and I've spent the past weekend playing it, and I've been extremely excited for this game ever since they announced it back in December 2016, because The Last of Us 1 is just one of my all-time favourites, so I was just beyond excited to jump back into this world and see Joel and Ellie's journey continue. I'm going to save the story and all the spoiler stuff for a little bit later on and talk about the technical stuff of Last of Us 2 first, the graphics, the gameplay and the mechanics. And from a technical standpoint, this game I felt was virtually flawless. The gameplay isn't super new compared to the first game. You've got your hotkeys and your weapon slots, and you've got your craftables like your medkits and your molotovs. It's the same basic principles, but it is incredibly polished and refined compared to the first one. They've taken the gameplay model of Last of Us 1, polished it, fine-tuned it, and just made it so much better in The Last of Us 2. The movements of the characters feel a lot quicker, the gunplay just feels more exciting to play and it feels more intense. Like the sequences with the enemies, both infected and humans, all of them were super intense and suspenseful for me. And the stealth kills in this game are just unbelievably satisfying. Quite possibly the most satisfying stealth kills I've ever had in a game. Like, you know the moments when you go prone underneath something and you get on your side, aim at the guy's head, shoot it with a silenced pistol, and you remain undetected? Tell me you don't feel like a massive badass when you do that stuff. That being said, this game is extremely brutal, like more brutal than I expected it to be, and more brutal than the first Last of Us. The first Last of Us had its element of brutal in it, but not to the level of this game. Like when you get a stealth kill on somebody and you stab them in the throat and the blood is just gushing out of the throat, you have that kind of sound, and they kind of gargle into the mouth as well. Gory, bloody, brutal and shocking, but still satisfying all at the same time. And I can't gush enough about the animations. The transition between animations and gameplay is the smoothest and most seamless I've ever seen in a game. Like when you're walking along and Ellie will grab something off a table, it just never gets in the way of the gameplay. The animations and the gameplay kind of go hand in hand in this game. They're almost like the same thing. And especially when you're fighting somebody in melee combat, the way Ellie will struggle to kind of readjust herself when she struggles to reload a gun and gets back into the fight, and how she dodges people. The dodge mechanic, by the way, very useful in melee combat. That was one thing that was missing from the first Last of Us. They put a dodge mechanic in here and it makes the melee combat all the more satisfying, because you're not just backing up and running away when someone's swinging at you. You're actually dodging them and you're hitting them back, and then you end it by like shoving a machete in the throat, and you're like, ugh. I gotta think that no matter how you feel about the story of this game, you can't deny just the smoothness of the animations and the gameplay and just how well they pulled it off. It's just so incredibly great. The graphics, as expected, are also amazing. Even with PS5 on the horizon and the graphics in the PS5 games looking amazing, PS4 still looks really, really great. And in this game, the surroundings with, you know, the destroyed cities, the overgrown, you know, like vegetation and the, you know, all the grass and weeds coming out the ground, the decayed buildings, it's just incredible game design, and you just feel so engrossed into this world, even more so than you were in the first game. And all the other technical stuff is just superb, like the sound design for the clickers and the infected was so good, and just everything else, the gunshots all pack a punch. The musical score was once again really, really good. Again, on a technical level, Last of Us 2, in my opinion, flawless. Not a single gripe with any of the mechanics, gameplay, all of it incredible. But now let's get right down to it and talk about the story, and let's get into these spoilers. So the non-spoiler version of the plot of this game is Ellie goes on a revenge quest after a really tragic event just messes her up. Now, going into the game, I thought it was going to be her new girlfriend Dina who gets killed, and that was what was going to set her on her revenge quest. Nope. Turns out it's actually Joel, who is hunted down and killed by this group called the WLF, or at least people who are from the WLF, who are based in Seattle, Washington. They're led by this woman called Abby, who you play as briefly at the start of the game, kind of in the tutorial part of the game where you learn to like crouch and run and shoot and sneak past clickers and whatnot. She gets into a bit of trouble with some runners and clickers, and Joel and Tommy on patrol actually save her, and she takes them back to the little mansion where her and all of her cronies are hanging out. And when Joel says his name, they all go, and you're like, wait, what's happening? And then she shoots him in the leg, and you're like, wait, no, this is not happening. Ellie comes bursting in. Joel is just messed up on the floor. He has had the living hell beaten out of him. and Ellie's all pinned down on the floor, and then Abby poof, just finishes Joel off. And yeah, right at the beginning of the game, you are just devastated because they actually went and did Joel like that. They killed Joel at the very beginning of the game. At first, I was like, did they just terminate a dark fate, John Connor, Joel? Did they just take one of the most important characters of the Last of Us story and just kill him off right at the very beginning for no reason? But unlike John Connor in Terminator Dark Fate, Joel's death serves a purpose. And an actually really good purpose, because again, going into the game, I thought it was going to be Dina who was going to get killed, and that's what sets Ellie on her revenge quest. But thinking that, going into the game, I was thinking, is that going to be a compelling enough reason for Ellie to go on a revenge quest? Am I going to care as much? But Joel being the one who gets killed got me instantly 100% invested in Ellie's revenge quest, because you are completely on her side. You want her to hunt these people down and kill every last one of them, as she said back in the reveal trailer, because Joel, man, how could they do this to Joel? What the hell? And just like the first Last of Us, you're barely into the story and you're already tearing up a storm, especially when Ellie is going through Joel's house and you pick up the framed photo of Joel and Sarah, his daughter. I was like getting the lumpy throat just at that, an optional interaction. But like I said, Joel's death is the perfect motivation for Ellie to go on her revenge quest, and that's what makes the story of this game so emotionally involving. You are with Ellie every step of the way, and the desire for revenge just keeps her going, and it keeps you going as well. It keeps you hooked into the story. And what I love about this game overall is the themes that it explores of hate and revenge and violence, because Ellie is just so consumed by this desperate need to get revenge, because Joel, being the father figure in her life, was ripped away from her, and she just can't live with the fact that Abby is out there and not getting justice for this. So she goes after her. You are right there with her. You want to get revenge on this woman as much as anybody else. But as the game progresses and as Ellie gets further and further into her quest for revenge, you really start to think about stuff, because you see how much it's consuming her, and you're seeing just how much dark stuff she's willing to do to get revenge for Joel. And it's very thought-provoking, but especially the scene when she gets to the aquarium and you have Owen and Mel there, and she kills the two of them, and she looks down and sees that Mel was pregnant, and she just breaks down. And it was that point where I was like, man, Ellie, you were taking it to some dark places. And it's those themes of hate and revenge and what it does to people, how it consumes people, and how it can really ruin people and just make people just crumble. And I love how that kind of contrasts the first game, because Neil Druckmann said when this game was first announced that the first game was about love and Last of Us 2 is about hate. So they kind of contrast each other in terms of tone and themes, but it's also because The Last of Us 2 is jumping off from Last of Us 1, and it's how love can lead to hate, and how the thing you love can lead to hate when that thing you love is taken away. And I just love the kind of duality of that, if that's the right word for it, how it kind of goes hand in hand, and tonally they're both very different, but they're also kind of the same at the same time. I don't really know if that makes sense, but that's the best way I can describe it. I just love how they explored those themes, and it was compelling, thought-provoking, and emotionally resonant as hell. So the story's going on, and Ellie's getting closer and closer to Abby and closer to her revenge, and it comes to the point in the theatre where Abby tracks them down after they've killed pretty much all of Abby's friends who were there when Abby killed Joel. She has Tommy at gunpoint, she kills Jesse, which quite surprised me and shocked me and saddened me, because Jesse was cool. And then all of a sudden the game takes a few steps backwards, and we see the first couple of days of Seattle, but from Abby's point of view, and we spend the next big chunk of the game playing as Abby and seeing what she was getting up to whilst Ellie was hunting her down. And we see that she was helping out these two kids. These two kids are former Scars, who are this cult that the WLF is fighting for control of Seattle. And Abby is trying to help these two kids basically survive the whole ordeal, because the WLF is about to go on a full-fledged war with the Scars. They're invading their island, and it's all coming to a head, and Abby's kind of going against the WLF. She's kind of deserting them to help these kids. This entire section of the game, playing as Abby, is my least favourite part of The Last of Us 2. I was so invested in Ellie's journey and her quest for revenge that when the game cut back to Seattle Day 1 and we started playing as Abby, I felt like the momentum of the story kind of grinded to a little bit of a halt. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually spent quite a bit of this time playing as Abby, kind of counting down the minutes until Ellie came back on screen because I just wanted to get back to her revenge quest. But I sat it out and I gave it a chance, and ultimately I do appreciate what this actually does for Abby as a character, because it humanizes her and it shows her motivation, because it turns out that when Joel rescued Ellie from the Fireflies at the end of the first game, the doctor that Joel killed was actually Abby's dad, and that was her main motivation for killing Joel, because I thought the group was killing Joel because he prevented the Fireflies from possibly making a vaccine. I thought that was the number one reason. It turns out it was Abby trying to get revenge for Joel killing her dad, and that right there established her motivation perfectly, and it made her an understandable antagonist. When it comes to the world of The Last of Us and exploring decisions that people make, it's all about perspective, and for the most part it's simple survival of the fittest, kill or be killed. And from Abby's perspective, she saw herself as doing something that was right and justified, and like any good antagonist or villain, she sees herself as the hero of her own story. So getting revenge on Joel for him killing her dad, she saw herself as doing the right thing there. So her motivation for killing Joel is understandable and solid from her perspective. It's just when it comes to a antagonist versus protagonist conflict, you're obviously going to choose a side depending on whose motivation just hits you the most. And I did not spend all those hours with The Last of Us 1 bonding with Joel and Ellie so much to get to The Last of Us 2 and then sympathise with Joel's killer. That was just never going to happen. So I'm Team Ellie all the way. So no matter how much they humanised Abby, I was always going to choose Ellie over Abby because I was so attached to Ellie and Joel in the first game. So Joel's now gone because of Abby, so I want Ellie to get revenge on Abby, even though the game does a good job of showing that Abby is not necessarily a bad person. She does have morals, and she's trying to do the right thing in saving these two kids from this war going on between the WLF and the Scars. And that's what makes the story all the more complex, because it's not just a straight up hero versus a villain conflict. It is two people coming into conflict with each other because of something the other person did. And it's all about perspective, like I said, and both of them have solid perspective. It's just like I said, Team Ellie. I want to reiterate that I did not dislike the Abby section of this game. In fact, there are actually some pretty good enemy sequences in there, and some good sections where you have to sneak past some infected. In fact, the part in the hospital where you have to fight that massive monster with the 5 heads, I believe it's called the Rat King, that stuff was intense as hell. And I actually liked the war that goes on between the WLF and the Scars, and that part towards the end of Abby's section where all the village is burning down and you're riding through it, that stuff was exciting and intense. And I just like the idea of like cults and stuff in this world, exploring more corners of the Last of Us universe. I'm always down for that stuff. And there are actually 2 moments involving the kids that did give me the feels. The first one being when you find Lev at his house and he's just had to kill his own mother because she was attacking him and whatnot, and he's all breaking down and crying over it. And the other moment being when the sister gets killed by the WLF, and in her last kind of dying thing, she kills Isaac and allows for Abby and Lev to escape. That also kind of gave me the feels as well. So yeah, the Abby section of this game is not without its upside. It's just, in terms of the overall game, it was my least favourite part of it, because I didn't have any emotional investment into that part of the game. My emotional investment into The Last of Us 2 is Ellie on her revenge quest, trying to avenge the murder of Joel. So when we're now playing as Joel's killer and seeing her doing stuff whilst Ellie's hunting her down, I just wasn't emotionally engaged into that stuff. I was entertained from a gameplay perspective and also from a story perspective, just seeing parts of the Last of Us universe we haven't seen before. It's just, like I said, least favourite part of the game for me. So we get to the end of Abby's section, we go back to the theatre with a confrontation between Abby and Ellie, and we actually get a bit of a boss fight where we're playing as Abby fighting Ellie. And at this point, I got very, very scared. I was like, wait, no, you are not about to have us kill Ellie as Abby. I was playing this sequence, sneaking behind Ellie and trying to attack her when she's not looking, and I was kind of boiling up inside a little bit because I genuinely thought for a second that we were about to kill Ellie as Abby. And I was like, why would you do this? I was kind of getting ahead of myself. I was like, why would they make us do this? Why would they make us side with Abby? But thankfully that doesn't happen. You know, Dina comes in and Abby's about to kill her, but they reveal she's pregnant, so she doesn't do it, and she just says, get out of my town, I don't ever want to see your face again. And then it cuts to a year or so in the future, and I was like, oh, thank God for that. Ellie's alive. We didn't kill her. They didn't make us choose Abby's side. Thank you. That was possibly the biggest sigh of relief that I've ever had in a game. But yeah, it jumps ahead about a year or so into the future, and Ellie and Dina are living on this farm, kind of like Dina talked about early on in the game. And Dina's baby's been born, but Ellie is still suffering that PTSD, and she just can't live with the fact that Abby has not paid for the death of Joel. So against the wishes of Dina, she embarks to go and finish this once and for all. Abby and Lev are in California looking for the Fireflies, who are supposedly regrouping, and they get ambushed by this group called the Rattlers, who then take them to their camp, and they basically become prisoners and slaves. Ellie arrives a few months later, fights through a whole bunch of Rattlers, and finally comes face to face with Abby again. And she's all malnourished, she looks a bit skinnier, and she has the shorter haircut. She's just had the crap tortured out of her, and she kind of helps her a little bit. They get to the boss, and she's like, wait, no, I can't let you go. And we have a final confrontation, fight really, between Ellie and Abby. And Ellie has got Abby under the water, she's about to drown her to death, she's finally about to get revenge, but she gets a brief flash of Joel, and she just can't bring herself to do it, and she just tells her to go away, get out of here. And it was just such a powerful fight scene. I was just so on the edge of my seat throughout that entire sequence. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. Was Abby about to die? Was Ellie about to die? So after all that goes down, Ellie returns to the house and finds Dina has gone. She's left with a kid. And this ties back to the themes of hate and revenge, and how it can consume somebody so much that they can lose themselves and lose everything they love. And with Ellie having to go and get that revenge, she has lost Dina and she's lost her home. And it was quite a sad ending, and I just like how it's not a happy ending, but it's just a bittersweet kind of ending. And we get that final flashback to Joel and Ellie, because earlier on in the epilogue, we get a flashback to the dance where Ellie and Dina kiss, and Seth confronts them, and Joel steps in to try and defend Ellie, and they have a bit of a confrontation. And at first I was like, oh, was the last interaction between Joel and Ellie one of a confrontational thing? That made me extremely sad. But this final flashback, which takes place later on that night, where Ellie goes up to Joel on the porch, and we see that the last time they spoke to each other was the start of kind of reconciliation, and Ellie attempting to forgive Joel. And Joel says if he could go back to when he saved Ellie, and if he could do it all over again, he would. He would save Ellie all over again. And he's got the tears in the eyes, you've got tears in the eyes, and it's just brilliant writing, acting, directing, and amazing character work. And I'm just glad that the last time they spoke to each other was on a somewhat positive note, and it didn't leave it on an argument. I can't believe I care this much about video game characters. Seriously, this just shows how brilliant Naughty Dog are at making characters, and it just shows how brilliant Joel and Ellie are as characters. So overall, The Last of Us Part 2 is a fantastic gaming experience, and although it might have seemed like I came across more negative than I wanted to be when talking about the Abby part of the game, that's why I wanted to do spoilers, because I needed to iterate my points properly. The Abby part of the game is still my least favourite part of the game, even though it's still a solid part of the game. So it's like, the game is 3/4 of an incredible game, and then 1/4 of a pretty good game. So that's why I don't head over heels love and adore The Last of Us 2, but when it concentrates on Ellie's revenge quest, it is enthralling as hell. The revenge quest is extremely emotionally investing and emotionally engaging. The gameplay is incredible, the animations and the gameplay work so well together, it's so seamless and so smooth. It is an excellent game. It only bums me out ever so slightly that I can't hail it as like a masterpiece like everyone else is, and I can't give it a 5 out of 5, but I'm still going to give The Last of Us 2 a 4.5 out of 5. It's still a terrific game, and I do actually kind of miss playing it. I might actually go back and do New Game Plus, which I've never actually done with a game before. Last of Us Part 2 might be a first, because I just miss that combat. I miss those stealth areas and those stealth kills. I need that stuff back in my life. Thank you very much for watching as always, guys, and the obvious question being, what did you think of The Last of Us Part 2 if you played it and completed it this weekend? Give me your full spoilerific thoughts down there, and if you want to see more of my stuff, click on one of these in a second, and I'll see you all next time.